Everything in Emma's life had settled into a quiet rhythm, the kind that whispers comfort, but sometimes feels like a lullaby that goes on too long. The town she lived in was peaceful, almost too peaceful, where people waved from porches, and secrets stayed hidden behind trimmed hedges and polite smiles. Her marriage to Lucas was stable, safe, even gentle. But lately, something felt missing. He was kind, always had been. But love that once burned now felt more like a flickering candle, soft and distant. Emma missed the way he used to look at her like she was the most beautiful chaos in his life. Now, he mostly looked at his phone. His work kept him busy, traveling often, and their home had started to feel like a waiting room, where she waited for him to return, and for herself to feel seen again. Lucas's father, Mr. Grant, had always been a background presence in their lives, a man carved out of silence and sharp suits. A widower for over a decade, he carried himself like someone who had learned to live with emptiness without letting it show. He moved in with them temporarily after a surgery, and though Emma didn't mind, she rarely exchanged more than a few sentences with him. He was polite, distant, but there was something about him, something unreadable in his eyes, like an old book left open just to the page before the story got interesting. She never thought much of it, until Lucas left again for a week-long trip, and the house grew even quieter. It was late one night, with rain tapping gently against the windows, that Emma heard slow, deliberate footsteps on the stairs. Her bedroom light cast a warm circle across the hardwood floor, but the hallway beyond was shadowed and still. She held her breath. Maybe it was just her mind playing tricks, until a soft knock at the door startled her heart into motion. Emma. "May I come in?" The voice was low, almost hesitant. "Mr. Grant." She sat up, unsure of what to say. Yes, of course," she replied, wrapping her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. The door creaked open slowly, and there he stood. Not the cold, silent figure she knew, but a man who looked as though he'd been carrying something heavy for far too long. He stepped inside carefully, like he wasn't sure he should be there. "I couldn't sleep," he said quietly. "And I realized something. I've never properly thanked you for the way you've taken care of this house. And of Lucas." His voice was softer than she had ever heard it, stripped of his usual formality. Emma's heart fluttered, not with attraction, not yet, but with confusion. It was the way he was looking at her. Not as a daughter-in-law, but as someone, he saw. "I just try to keep everything going," she said, brushing her hair behind her ear, suddenly aware of how vulnerable she felt in the quiet. Mr. Grant took a slow breath. "You remind me of someone I used to love," he said, his eyes lowering, briefly, filled with something unspoken. The air between them grew heavier, like a thread being pulled tighter with every word. Emma swallowed, not knowing how to respond. The moment lingered too long. Then a sudden noise downstairs, a thud, broke the tension. They both jumped slightly. "Must be the wind," she said quickly, standing up. But the mood had shifted. Something had been stirred awake that couldn't be easily put back to sleep. Emma didn't know what it meant yet, but deep down, a part of her already knew. Everything had been quiet. Until now. The next morning, Emma tried to shake off the strange weight from the night before. She told herself it was nothing, a late-night conversation with a lonely man who simply missed connection. But deep down, the way Mr. Grant had looked at her lingered like perfume in the air, delicate but impossible to ignore. She went about her routine, making coffee, watering the plants, folding Lucas's clothes for when he returned. But her hands moved while her mind stayed stuck in that moment. Why had he said she reminded him of someone he used to love? Why had it felt like more? Mr. Grant, as if sensing her thoughts, appeared in the kitchen just as the sun poured through the windows. He looked different that morning, less guarded, almost lighter. "Smells like cinnamon," he said, nodding toward the muffins Emma had just taken out of the oven. "You always make this house feel warm." Emma smiled politely, but her heart was unsteady. He was watching her again, not in a disrespectful way, but with a kind of admiration that made her feel seen, truly seen. Lucas used to look at her like that. When they first met, he'd light up every time she walked into the room. Now, he barely noticed when she left it. She loved him, of course she did. But that love had grown quiet over time, buried under routines, unanswered texts, and, maybe, later kisses. Over the next few days, Mr. Grant found reasons to linger near her, asking for help with books on the top shelf, joining her for tea in the garden, complimenting the soft music she played while cleaning. Nothing was inappropriate. But it was close. Too close. His compliments were subtle, his eyes lingering just a beat too long. And yet, Emma didn't pull away. She hated herself for it, but part of her liked the attention. She missed feeling desirable. She missed feeling important. One afternoon, as rain pattered softly on the windows and thunder rolled far in the distance, they sat together on the porch, 2 cups of tea growing cold between them. Mr. Grant was speaking softly about his late wife, his voice filled with old pain and tender memories. "She was kind like you," he said. "She had this quiet way of making everyone feel safe, even when she was falling apart inside." Emma's eyes glistened. "That sounds familiar," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She wasn't sure if she meant herself, or if she just wished someone would say that about her too. Their eyes met and held. The silence between them was thick with things they weren't saying. And then, without realizing it, their hands brushed on the armrest. A soft, electric touch that made Emma's breath hitch. She didn't move. Neither did he. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, drawing his hand back. I shouldn't have." But Emma didn't feel angry. She felt confused, torn between loyalty and longing, between the life she had and the emotions waking up inside her like flowers after winter. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A message from Lucas. "Hey, change of plans. I'm flying back early. We'll be home tomorrow." Emma froze. The spell broke instantly. The tea was cold. The porch felt too small, and Mr. Grant looked away, his jaw tightening, as though he already knew. She stood quickly, murmuring something about needing to prepare the guest room. But as she walked away, she realized it wasn't just the storm outside that had unsettled her. Something inside her had shifted, and now nothing felt quiet anymore. The morning light felt different the day Lucas returned. Brighter, almost harsh, like it was exposing something that had been safely hidden in the dim corners of Emma's heart. She stood at the kitchen counter, hands trembling slightly as she prepared breakfast. Mr. Grant sat at the table, unusually quiet, the same way the air feels before a thunderstorm. Their eyes met once, just briefly, and in that glance was everything they couldn't say out loud. The hand that had brushed hers. The silence charged with something that could so easily tip into something more. And now, Lucas was coming home. When Lucas walked in that afternoon, smiling and tired, Emma ran into his arms with a warmth she hoped would cover the guilt clinging to her skin. He kissed her forehead, told her he missed her, and dropped his bags by the stairs. Mr. Grant stepped forward, offering a polite nod and a quiet welcome. Nothing seemed out of place. Everything looked normal. But inside, Emma was a storm. That night, as Lucas unpacked and chatted about his trip, Emma felt like she was standing at a window watching her life from the outside. She loved him. She did. But why did her chest feel hollow when he touched her? Why did she keep thinking about someone else's eyes? Someone else's words? Over the next few days, Mr. Grant withdrew. He avoided being alone with her. He spoke less. But that distance only made Emma ache more. There was something about him she couldn't stop remembering. The way he had listened. The way his voice softened when he spoke about love and loss. And the way he had looked at her like she was more than just someone's wife. One evening, Lucas fell asleep early on the couch, the TV humming quietly in the background. Emma walked out onto the porch, the same place where too much had been said without words. And she wasn't surprised when, a few minutes later, Mr. Grant joined her. The night air was cool, scented with pine and something sweeter, perhaps guilt, perhaps longing. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he said suddenly, not looking at her. Emma's heart pounded. "Neither did I. I wasn't trying to cross any line," he continued. "But you make it hard not to feel something." She turned to him slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you feel something?" His eyes met hers, and in them, she saw a man who had been silent for too long, who had lost too much, and had just begun to remember what it felt like to want something again. "Yes," he said, "more than I should." Emma swallowed hard. "So do I." There was a pause, long, heavy, intimate. The porch light flickered, casting a soft halo around them. Their hands were close again, too close, a touch away from something irreversible. But neither of them moved. Neither of them dared. Just then, a familiar voice broke the stillness. "Emma?" Lucas called groggily from inside. She flinched, stepping back as if the night itself had caught her in a lie. "I have to go," she said quickly, her voice shaking. Mr. Grant didn't stop her. He only nodded, eyes dark with restraint. Emma walked back inside, her breath shallow. She climbed into bed beside her husband and stared at the ceiling, the sound of her own heartbeat louder than the wind. Because now, something had crossed the line. And though nothing had happened, everything had changed. The days that followed were filled with the kind of silence that didn't feel peaceful. It felt heavy, like walking through fog, never quite knowing what was ahead. Emma moved through her home like a shadow, doing all the right things, kissing Lucas good morning, making dinner, laughing at the right moments. But her heart wasn't in any of it. It had split somewhere along the way, quietly, without warning. Part of it still belonged to the man she married. But another part, unexpected and quietly burning, remained in the silence of a night on the porch, in the unspoken words between her and the one man she should never have felt anything for. Grant kept his distance, and Emma knew it was intentional. He had gone back to being formal, even cold, never allowing his eyes to linger, never letting his words soften again. But the damage, or maybe the awakening, was already done. And sometimes, the things left unsaid were the ones that echoed the loudest. Emma missed him more than she expected. It wasn't a romantic fantasy, not exactly. It was something deeper, more dangerous, a longing to feel connected, to feel alive, to be touched without being touched. One evening, Lucas came home with flowers. Her favorite, white lilies. He smiled, kissed her cheek, and told her he booked a weekend away for the two of them. "I think we need to reset," he said gently. "I've been so focused on everything else, and I forgot how to love you right." Emma's heart ached. Not because she didn't appreciate it, but because she knew he had no idea how far apart they had drifted. She smiled, nodded, hugged him back. But in that hug, she felt how much she had changed. It wasn't just about Mr. Grant. It was about the silence she had lived in for years, the emotional distance, the loneliness she had swallowed with every polite conversation, every empty kiss. That night, she couldn't sleep. The weight of it all pressed against her chest, and she realized something. If she didn't speak, the silence would eventually crush her. She found Mr. Grant in the study, reading, alone. He looked up when she entered but didn't say a word. "I need to say something," Emma began, her voice trembling but steady. "Not because I expect anything, not because I want anything, but because I can't carry it alone anymore." He closed his book slowly, waiting. "I felt something. With you," she confessed. "Not lust, not some foolish infatuation. It was more complicated than that. It was a moment of being seen, of being understood. And I didn't realize how much I missed that until I felt it again." Mr. Grant looked at her, his face unreadable, but his eyes glistened. "You don't owe me an explanation, Emma." "I'm not giving one," she said. "I'm choosing honesty, before it becomes another secret that eats me alive." He nodded slowly. "What will you do?" Emma exhaled, the truth settling in her chest like something bittersweet. "I'll stay, with Lucas, because I love him, but I won't stay quiet anymore. We deserve better than a quiet marriage and silent hearts." She turned to leave, then paused. "Thank you for reminding me of who I am." He didn't follow her. He didn't try to stop her. But his voice followed her as she walked away. "And thank you for letting me feel something again." That night, Emma returned to bed beside her husband. Not with guilt, but with a quiet resolve. She had danced on the edge of something dangerous and beautiful, and it had changed her. She hadn't crossed the line with her body, but her heart had wandered, and now it was returning home, wiser, more awake, and ready to fight for love that didn't just exist, but truly lived. And sometimes, that's where real love begins. If you like, subscribe to Echo Tales for deeply emotional, romantic, and mature stories that echo through your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support meaningful storytelling.